and just begin, since it's 12:23, and say thank you guys for being here. I'm Courtney, one of the librarians on campus, and I've been taking over the international poetry reading since I started in 2015. But this is Charlie, and Sue Brunel has just joined us. Thank you. You guys have been doing this since day one of the first program ever. Do you remember what year that was?
I think 2009.
2009. Wow.
Because once again, like Charlie and I, the only ones, we are the only two like who have been there every single year, right?
I think I was there pretty early on too. I can look to see when was my first poem, but I missed 1 year. I know that I was out of town for a conference, but so far I've been on it pretty regularly.
Yeah, I did every year but last year.
There you go. Yeah, I was gonna say all of you guys have been doing it at least definitely since I sort of took it over, and we're so happy to have you continue to be a part of it and listen to the poems that we've got today. So just to the folks that are watching, those of you who hopped on recently, I've also got it streaming to our Facebook group. So even if we don't see people here in the audience, there's people over there that are watching. So this is an event to celebrate not only National Poetry Month and poetry across the globe, but also to celebrate National Library Week. And I am going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here so that we can see this presentation that I've got. Let's see here. Okay, is everybody able to see this presentation? The Google slide. Okay, cool. We've got yeah, so this is just a little presentation that I put together that will help you guys follow the poems so that you can see it. This here is a photo of a poetry reading in Berlin, which I thought was kind of apropos for the event here today. But like I was saying, we also do this every year during National Library Week, which is the 4th through the 10th. And I just wanted to take a few moments before we jump into the poems to talk about what the pandemic this past year has reinforced about libraries. And it's really reinforced, I think, like 5 key things. The first one is that libraries are more than just their physical spaces. But at the same time, those physical spaces are really missed by patrons. And the third thing is that librarians are active, educators, not the passive gatekeepers of, let's say, like, the 30s and 40s. I think we're really set up pretty well going into the pandemic because we already had so many digital resources. In fact, the American Library Association released a report that said this past year, collectively, nationwide, digital resource usage amongst all types of libraries has surged by 40%. As you can imagine, it makes sense, right? Everybody's like at home accessing things. But that also brings me to the 4th point, is that this pandemic has really reinforced that libraries are all about collaboration. We collaborated with a lot of organizations. Not only did we continue our normal collaborations with all the other IU campuses, we also had partnerships with Hathi Trust to provide immediate access to literally the physical collection of the library. And I think that collaboration has been and will continue to be important, especially in a world where library budgets are constantly shrinking. And the last point here is that libraries embrace and thrive on change. We always have, we always will. We've implemented a number of new programs and services like the mailing service that we're not going to stop anytime soon. So just a little sort of advocacy moment for why we hold this program during National Library Week. Libraries are also institutions that bring people together. And that's what this event is. And we're so happy to have you guys here. And with that, I am going to pass the baton to Charlie, who's going to begin with a series of poems.
Thank you so much, Courtney, for hosting us again and putting together. Oh, this looks so nice. The flyer, the brochure you put together. Okay, this is a poem by Petrarch, who was the Italian who almost single-handedly, not really, but was a major mover and shaker and ushering in the Renaissance in Europe. And so, looks like you got cut off a little bit at the bottom, but I've got the last line was cut off, but I've got a copy myself. So, and I love this poem because he's talking about the knowledge that comes from being old. How in your youth you misspend, or you become so consumed by yourself that you miss perhaps the important things of life. But you come, and finally at the end, if you live that long, you come to the point where you realize that taking yourself seriously was not really all that beneficial, and that it's nice to realize that, and to realize that, of course, life is very short. And that's what the very last line. So Courtney, I don't know, did the last line? I see it there at the bottom. I don't know if you can push it up maybe. The last line is such a beautiful line. I hate for it not to be seen.
Let me see what I can do here. If you want to
I
tell
see
us
the little letters at the bottom.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about Petrarca, and I'm going to try to move it up real quick.
Oh, you got it. That's it. That's it.
Okay, perfect.
That's it. Hey, there you go. Right on. Yeah. So, and as I said, I love this poem because it's about getting old, which I'm doing. So, in the process of doing. So it speaks to me particularly these days. Okay. Voi che ascoltate in rime sparse il suono di quei sospiri ond'io nudriva il core, in sul mio primo giovanile errore, quant'era in parte altruomo da quel che sono, del vario stile in ch'io piango e ragiono fra le vane speranze e il van dolore, ove sia chi per prova intenda amore, spero trovar pietà, nonché perdono. Ma ben veggio or, siccome al popol tutto favola fi gran tempo, onde sovente di me medesmo mecco mi vergogno, e del mio vaneggiar vergogna è il frutto, è il pentersi, è il conoscer chiaramente che quanto piace al mondo è breve sogno. Ronsard was a 16th century French poet who was inspired by the Italian Renaissance, as all of the French Renaissance was, basically. So this follows in the wake of Petrarch for sure. Ronsard was the court poet, so he was a very privileged person in the 16th century. And you'll see that this is totally different from the other poem because this is about the joys of drinking. And Ronsard, no doubt, purportedly was very full of himself. And he was not averse to seeking out the comforts from younger women and those kinds of things. And no doubt he spent a lot of time partying because he was at the royal court. So this is about those kinds of things. Oh, here. Decorate myself up a little bit. For this one. rafraîchir mon vin de sorte qu'il passe en froideur un glaçon. Fais venir Jeanne, qu'elle apporte son luth pour dire une chanson. Nous bâillerons tous trois au son et dis à Barbe qu'elle vienne, les cheveux torses à la façon d'une folâtre italienne. Ne vois-tu que le jour se passe? Je ne vis point au lendemain. Page reverse dans ma tasse, que ce grand verre soit tout plein. Maudit soit qui languit en vain. Ces vieux médecins, je n'approuve. Mon cerveau n'est jamais bien sain si beaucoup de vin ne l'abreuve.
Oh, it's always the energy you bring to it, Charlie, is always so amazing.
That's an easy poem to bring energy to. It's fun.
And I know you have one more for us today.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, this is the place where I wanted to use that screen, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. If I can, let me see if I'll. Where is it? Okay. This photo behind me is of it's from Guadeloupe. And I'm sorry about all the fluctuating of it, but this is purportedly a slave burial ground that was found in the forest. And so it's, the graves are outlined by conch shells. I don't know if you can see, it's probably not see it very well there. But anyway, I guess you want to bring back the, there you go, bring back the screen, that's fine. Okay, and this is testament, and testament is not testament in English so much as it is will. It's a will, if you will. So this is what he's wishing for, and what I also would wish for, I think, if I could, as a something on my grave, if you will. Les mourir fait belle veille pour moi. M'pas pral ni dans paradis, ni dans enfer. Pinga peut parler latin, non, tête-moi. Les mourir, enterrez-moi dans la cour. Rassemblez toutes amis, me fait belle fête. Pinga passer l'église à cadavre moins. Les mourir, c'est pour tout le monde bien gai. Rire, chanter, danser, by blague. Pinga crier. Rêler n'en aurait moins. Les mourir, un pape final et net. Tout côté qui gagne un bel bamboche. Côté nègre libre. Froyo non moins, non moins.
Thank you, Charlie, for those series of poems.
Thanks for the opportunity.
We have next up a poem from Mindy Badia, who's going to share with us here.
I'm a cliche, I'm a meme, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
This is a poem by Francisco de Quevedo, who was writing mostly in the 17th century. And it's a sonnet, so I chose it because I always love a good sonnet, so props to Petrarch too. And I also chose it because underneath this crusty exterior beats the heart of a hopeless romantic. So I liked the content, what the poem says. And I was playing around with the translation. I wanted to translate this poem, but I wanted to keep the English. When I wrote it in English, I wanted to write it using the form of an English sonnet, and a sonnet in Spanish is formally different from a sonnet in English. It's not just the language. So that was tricky. It was like wearing two girdles instead of one, you know, because it was constraining just to do a sonnet and then to do it in another language. But so this is Quevedo's Amor Constante Más Allá de la Muerte. Cerrar podrá mis ojos la postrera sombra que me llevare el blanco día, y podrá desatar esta alma mía, ora a su afán ansioso lisonjera. Mas no, de otra parte en la ribera, dejará la memoria en donde ardía. Nadar sabe mi llama, el agua fría, y perder el respeto a ley severa. Alma a quien todo un Dios prisión ha sido, venas que humor tanto fuego han dado, médulas que han gloriosamente ardido. Su cuerpo dejarán, no su cuidado. Serán ceniza, mas tendrá sentido. Polvo serán, mas polvo enamorado. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Our next speaker here is Supernal Day with some Tagore.
So I chose this particular poem this time because this is a poem of introspection, and this whole year with starting with transition that happened about a year ago. It has been a period of introspection for probably everyone to different extents and in different ways. But for me and for many people worldwide, it has been a time of isolation. And as I have shared with some of you, including Courtney, from time to time, that this has been interesting because I personally happen to be quite a gregarious person. So like this isolation has been somewhat hurtful at times. And hopefully finally we are starting to come out of it. But there have been silver linings, and it has been a time of introspection and some realizations, occasional epiphanies, and so forth. And of course, spending more time with poetry and attempted creative endeavors. But one thing that I have felt intrigued with is how, once again, how the human mind works, and what creates thought processes, and what the interconnections are. For example, knowing oneself better, how in my situation, for example, for me personally, of course, trying to understand myself better, getting a better grasp of the overall pattern of the self, and trying to attain a better realization of my own philosophy of life. That is one thing, and then that's important to any thoughtful person in their own respective ways. But also one thing that never-endingly intrigues me is the spontaneous thoughts, like be it in the form of, again, something like a realization, or a sudden realization, or an epiphany, or a poetic thought, or be in the form of some humble mathematical thought, or understanding a connection, like things that just pop up spontaneously, and so once in a while feels like humble magic. Those sometimes are very intriguing, and like when those happen, like in my situation, like even in a down-to-earth humble way, when those happen, I almost feel like feel the desire to like dive deep into my mind and to see like what is there that gives rise to like these interesting, sometimes quirky or surprising phenomenon of the mind. And Tagore's poetry is a rich place to find these kinds of these thoughts or desires expressed in sublimely lyrical words. So during this year, one of the many Tagore poems that I revisited and ruminated time and again. So this happens to be one of them, and I chose this one for the event this year. So without further ado, let me recite. I cannot once again see all the words, and I'm a technophobe, so I do not know how to take care of this. But I hope I have the words memorized once again, so I'll just try to recite from memory. আমি কান পেতে রই ও আমার আপন হৃদয় গহন দ্বারে বারে বারে কোন গোপন বাসির কান্না হাসির গোপন কথা শুনিবারে বারে বারে ভ্রমর শেথা হয় বিবাগী নিভৃত নীল পদ্মলাগিরে কোন রাতের পাখি গায়ে একাকী সঙ্গীবিহীন অন্ধকারে বারে বারে কে সে মোর কেই বা জানে কিছু তার দেখি আভা কিছু পাই অনুমানে কিছু তার বুঝি না বা ও সে আমায় জানি পাঠায় বাণী গানের তানে লুকিয়ে তারে বারে বারে আমি কান পেতে রই ও আমার আপন হৃদয় গহন দ্বারে। Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Subranil. We always love the background that all of you guys bring to this event, to these poems, telling us a little bit about not just your poems and your poets, but about what poetry means to you, and how it affects you. And I think that, you know, what you said really is why it was so important for us to continue this event, even virtually, because we're all so isolated, we're all so lonely, and we're feeling that in a whole spectrum of different ways. And so it's really amazing to just be here in this space together apart.
So what was the body? What was the repetitive part? Body, body.
Bare bare. Bare bare. So bar in Bengali means time, like the time it happens, like so to make a long story short, bar is like time and time. So time and again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So time and again, he sends me messages. Time and again, I eavesdrop. So that is what bare bare means.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks. And we have Renita Harris, who mentioned in the chat that, let's see here, let me go back to it. Your first poem was in 2008. So here from the very beginning as well. And that's so amazing to still see all of you guys joining us here today. And you have a couple of poems now that you're going to share with us.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney. I dig into my old files, and my first poem that I read in 2008 was about food. That's great. How much I like food, that's very fitting. So, and over the years, I have chosen different poems to read, many of them from famous poet back in the history. Many of them are from the recent events, from politician. This year, I'm doing something different again. And while I was searching, I noticed that I don't know that many poets in Thai anymore. I've been away from the country for so long, so I don't know who's a new upcoming poet that we should keep an eye on, that kind of thing. So, however, so I start off looking at one of my favorite poet, and his article talks about one of these girls who wrote a poem every day since she was 7 years old. And the family posted information of the poem that she wrote on Facebook. So I follow and look her up, and it was adorable. So what she did, she's a young girl, 8 years old now, but she's been writing one poem every day. And it's from the perspective of her everyday lives. Or it could be something interesting that happened. Sometimes she talks about, oh, my sister studied so hard. I wish her well on her test, or whatever it is. One poem a day. And it's not long, it's not complicated, but she enjoyed it. So I picked one of the poems that she wrote on March 27th of this year. That's when I was writing up, I'm looking for something to read. And the day after March 28th is Thailand Municipal Election Day. So the day before, she wrote this poem about election, and it's a perspective from an 8-year-old Thai girl. So the image on the screen on the left is how she wrote a poem each day with the title, and all the poems she wrote, I saw there's only 2 stanzas. Each one has 4 lines, 4 verses. So I translated into the right-hand side in English. And then if you want to try and to pronounce it along with me, it's in parentheses right underneath. So it's like a phonics type reading the poem. So this way you can feel, you can see some of the rhyming and things along the way. So, all right, so this poem, it's about, it's Go Vote, literally a literal translation, Go Vote. That's the title. Okay, all right, here we go. วันพรุ่งนี้จะต้องไปเลือกตั้งหนูคอยฟังคะแนนอย่างสุขีว่าคนไหนนั้นจะได้โชคดีวันพรุ่งนี้นั้นจะเป็นผู้ใดทีมที่แพ้ชนะไม่ต้องสนเราทุกคนก็ช่วยเมืองกันได้แค่ขอให้ร่วมมือและร่วมใจเพื่อทำให้เมืองเราได้งดงาม So this is a poem number 827 by Rinrak Seko. That's the name of the girl. So, a little further research, I found that she have a collection. She published a collection of her poem in a book, and it's cost 200 baht, which is about I would say $16-17 ish, and it's so the picture on the cover is actually her and my favorite poet. That's how I found her, because I read his article, and he's very supportive of her of Rinrak, which is the girl's little hobby. And I picked another poem written by her, and that was a year ago during the lockdown. And you notice that her poems are shorter. There's still 2 stanzas, but they're shorter. They're a lot simpler. So in the period of a year, she has developed her poem in a much more complicated structure. So this one, this poem is about face masks, and it was written from the perspective that she wondered why it is so expensive. So here we go. Face mask. หน้ากากอนามัยฉันสงสัยเป็นนักหนาทำไมมีราคาแพงนักหนาแพงเกินไปหรือผ้าทำจากทองฉันก็มองอย่างสงสัยดูแล้วก็ไม่ใช่แล้วทำไมขายแพงจัง So this is a poem written by an 8-year-old, and the proceed by selling this collection of her work, part of it donated to the hospital to buy medical equipment. So I think it's pretty interesting story, and I had a lot of fun researching this project. Thanks.
Thank you. That was the final poem that we had for today's poetry reading, but I put a link to that her Facebook account in our Facebook stream there. So if you want to follow along, I think that's so amazing. And what, like, just motivation Like 7 years old and writing a poem a day. I mean, that's amazing. I want to give our presenters any a chance for any final comments or thoughts on anything that we talked about today, or their poets or poems before we sign off.
One thing I didn't mention, the Haitian poet is is the first and still, I think, probably considered the best of all Haitian poets who have published in Haitian Creole. So it's Félix Morisseau Leroy, a very famous Haitian poet. He wrote also in French, but he's the first and probably still the greatest poet to publish in Haitian Creole. Forgot to mention that.
Just want to say thank you, Courtney, for organizing the event. I know it's really difficult to get people to participate, but we all the diehard fans here, so please keep it going.
Oh my gosh. Thank you guys. Thank you for that comment, Renita. But I'm going to turn it right back on you guys. Thank you. I just set up a platform and you guys take the rest. And it's so amazing that to have you guys time and time again have been with us from the very beginning. And we have no plans of stopping this event. We just hope that this is the second year in a row, of course, that it's been virtual, because last year was literally at the very beginning of the pandemic. And that was so scary. And especially then it felt so important to continue having it, to just have a place where we could all come together and feel a little normal for a moment. And also be inspired by the beauty of poetry, which I think the past 2 years, just listening to you guys feels so much more impactful than maybe like what it tends to, you know, it's always a beautiful event, but these past 2 years have felt really important.
We should celebrate still being here.
Yeah.
If I may just like add this silly thought, like last year when this was happening, what passed through my mind is something along the lines of, well, like next year, of course, like things will be back to normal, like by long, and we will look back by a year and remember how like that 1 year we had to do this by Zoom, like holy no. Then like on the Stephen Colbert show, like a few weeks ago, like yeah, he was talking about something similar. Like when it started, like that very night, he was doing the show from his home, and at one point he was just being goofy and lying down in his bathtub and said something like, well, they're saying that this might go on for 2 full months, like 8 full weeks. So be ready. Like, yeah, 8 weeks. We wish. So it has been interesting. So Courtney, thank you again so much for keeping the tradition going, and you have made this like kept this delightful and so much of a fun event. So.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be able to coordinate this, knowing how much it means to not only all of you, but all of us in the library to just continue this program like 12, 13 years running. And hopefully we will be in person next year. I feel pretty confident. We are really going to have a celebration for 2022's International Poetry Reading. And once again, just thank you guys for spending your time and energy curating these poems and presenting them here today. And it is, like I said, live on our library's Facebook, so it's going to be archived there. But I will also grab a recording of this and send to you guys. So if you want to share or mention to any friends, family, or students who weren't able to make it today, they can watch it immediately on our library's Facebook as well.
Wonderful.
Well, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of the day.
You too.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Again.
Thank you.